and the bloody chat group gives me the worst FOMO. But I can't stop reading it. I'm absolutely hooked by it. All these weird coins. But like the last few days has just been insane. All these stupid coins that have got absolutely no purpose whatsoever. I mean, there's one called shitcoin. There's one called shitcoin, and it was up 35% last night. 35%, and Bitcoin, is down whatever it is, 5 or 10%.
Like,
And I don't know. So,
but surely
you say
you saw this in like the 2017 bull market, right? It's nothing new. It's not like surprising. It's just when there's bull markets, kind of like a rising tide lifts all boats kind of thing. All coins go up and there's like waves and ripples. There's not much logic to it, I think.
No, there's no logic in a bull market except for FOMO and psycho. I tell you what, there is in a bull market: psycho logic, as Rory Sutherland would put it, rather than logic. It's all psychological. But
sure.
I remember in the 2013 bull market, like I got given, somebody gave me shed loads of WorldCoin. Whatever happened to WorldCoin? But I got loads of it, and I should have sold it on whatever it was, November 2013. But yeah, and there were loads of them. And if you look at like what the top 10 coins were in 2013 compared to the top 10 coins now, I'm not even sure Ethereum was around. I think Ethereum may have been just around, but the other top 10, I don't think they exist anymore. Monero, Monero was called like Darkcoin or something like that at first.
So yeah, like just I think we actually started streaming to let our audience know. Dominic was just talking about Monero, so it was quite an interesting conversation. So I thought I'd just go straight into the podcast. But Monero is I kind of have a soft spot for Monero, and I think a lot of Bitcoiners do. I think the origin story is quite interesting if you're familiar with the story behind that.
Was that Amir Taki going off to Spain?
No, I think that no, the thing that was it Dash came from that one? There was like a dark coin.
It might have done.
I think that was
a dark
Dash.
Coin Amir worked on.
No, but Monero was actually started. The thing that a lot of Bitcoin, I suppose, maximalists like about Bitcoin is the way it was introduced, right? Kind of some sort of like immaculate conception. There was like no, as you know, there's no person who's still around who created it or who speaks for it. So Monero is like that. It was created by somebody, I think it was called Thankful for Tomorrow or Thankful for Today. And he was the initial kind of benevolent dictator.
So funny, these names, yeah.
Yeah, but he was the benevolent dictator. And then like the audience the community, he basically turned out to be like a bit of a knob, right? And the community kind of forked away from him. So everybody who was running Monero, like it kind of in a way, it lost its creator in a nice way. So it didn't really have that central point. So that's why there was nobody in Monero who pre-mined a bunch of Monero coin or who made it. So I think that's why a lot of Bitcoiners like it. So, and then Fluffy Pony was, are you familiar with,
Ricardo Spagni?
Yeah, I think he's left the project, but he was always, I believe so. He stepped down. Well, yeah, I think, I don't know. I think a lot, you were saying about privacy, I think was the issue that Monero was always kind of, it was, people preferred to use it over Bitcoin because of its privacy properties.
Well, I used to say when I was working for Cypherpunk Holdings, just picking up, I said this just before we came on air, that owning Monero is like sometimes you would buy BHP Billiton to get exposure to the copper price. There's a sort of logic why you would buy something. You might not buy BHP Billiton because it's a particularly good company, but it is a large copper, or Rio Tinto, but it's a large copper producer, and it's a good way of playing. If you think copper's going up,
sure,
Rio Tinto is a good way to play that. And following that similar logic, I think owning Monero is a good way of playing the theme of dark markets. It's like owning shares in the black market in a funny kind of way. And if you think dark markets are going to grow, and I happen to think they are, and I think they're a force for good and a force for bad, as we'll come to discuss when we come to Shadowpunk Revolution. There's good and bad to them, but I do think they're a huge growth area. Like I'm looking at potentially going. I'm in two minds about the COVID vaccine, and so I'm considering going on dark markets and getting myself a fake COVID passport. If you ever get those. So
I'm sure there'll be a market for that. I'm sure.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, amongst vaccine cynics. But anyway, so But if you think they're going to grow because more people are going to smoke weed, or more people are going to want, 3D plastic guns, or whatever it is, Monero is a good way of getting exposure, because it is the sort of, now I think, the coin of choice on the dark markets. I might be wrong about that, but I used to say, so it's like owning shares in dark market protocols in a way. And then Matonis said, no, it's not going to work. What will happen is that layers of privacy will be added to Bitcoin. John Matonis, an old friend of mine, and lo and behold, he was right. We got things like Samurai Wallet and Wasabi Wallet and mixing and all the rest of it. And so Monero sort of, I watched it relative to other coins over the last year or so, and it was just sort of died a slow death. And it was always a top 10 coin. It was always like, 6 or 7 in the top 10. It was always, a bit like Wolverhampton Wanderers or something like that. And then it would, but it's just sort of gone down. And it's a bit like, what was that team, Wigan? Do you remember Wigan were always like really good, and now they're like in about the 3rd division or something?
Sure.
And I noticed Monero was like 45th in the market cap list, and it just slowly died a death and just hasn't rallied like all the other coins over the past year. And then over the last week or two, it's just suddenly had a huge rally. It's done really well, and I don't quite know why.
Yeah, obviously it's hard to know why some things increase. I guess a lot of tokens, a lot of other coins have utility when Bitcoin's fees become so high. It's like difficult to use as for payments, and I think we're seeing very high, fees at the moment. So I've noticed, like, I remember Litecoin kind of pumped because people were using Litecoin to move their Bitcoin between exchanges. They convert into Litecoin on the exchange, and then they'd send a Litecoin to another exchange. So maybe Monero is filling the gap, because mixers on Bitcoin don't work well when the fees are high. This is like a kind of a thing with Bitcoin,
That's interesting.
Because it's on chain, right? And there are like off chain layers of privacy. Lightning is actually quite interesting for that, because Lightning is privacy and scalability are kind of mixed together. To scale, you broadcast less data to the blockchain, right? But by broadcasting less data, obviously you have more privacy. But yeah, I would imagine it could be to do with fees, And also Monero has privacy by default. I think a lot of other coins like Zcash, in order to be listed on exchanges, they kind of turn the privacy off, because it's like a requirement not to be too private.
Yeah.
So on certain exchanges, so it could be something to do with that. I'm not sure.
I was in. I'm going to say something that's going to get me in a lot of trouble now. But I
You
was
hit it here first, folks.
I was in. Well, really, I'm going to lose half my followers. I was in Devon at the weekend, and
there we go.
A bit of rural Devon.
Cornwall fans switching off now.
Yeah, and we went to an Indian restaurant. We went to the pub, which was doing a Turkish themed night, but you couldn't go and eat in the pub. You had to do a takeaway. And I went to the pub, and I fell in love with Devon instantly, or that pub in that moment, because it's like the one place in the country that still doesn't take credit cards, and insisted on cash.
Nice.
And I didn't have any cash on me, so I got my friend ended up paying 60 quid in cash for this meal, and then we went back to his gaff, and I said, well, I owe you 60 quid, and I didn't have any cash, and I had some Bitcoin, but by the time I would have paid in Bitcoin from my phone to his phone, it would have cost me, I don't know, it just wasn't worth it for 60 quid. So I ended up paying him with Bitcoin Cash.
There you go.
Because I had some left over. And I have to say, it worked beautifully. It was cost whatever, not very much. He photographed my QR code, or I photographed his QR code. I can't remember which way around. And I gave him the 60 quid, and it cleared like that. So, for all the politics around Bitcoin Cash, it worked in that instance. And this was a real world application rather than, it was a real world use case, a genuine real world use case.
I have a story about that as well. I was in at the Roger Ver's Bitcoin meetup in Tokyo, because Roger Ver, obviously he kind of did the Bitcoin meetup in Tokyo, and then during like the block wars, it was kind of became, for a while before the split happened, it was like the room was divided between big blockers and small blockers, and then eventually they splintered off into a Bitcoin Cash meetup. But we both shared the same restaurant, and the restaurant became, they converted to Bitcoin Cash because it was better for payments. And we, around about the same time, the Bitcoin Cash was doing, they were spam attacking their own network to test the scalability of it. So I actually won some Bitcoin Cash at a hackathon. I came third place at a Bitcoin Cash hackathon. And I had some Bitcoin Cash, so I went to buy a Bitcoin Cash beer. They had a special Bitcoin Cash beer. and it didn't work because they were spamming their own network at the time that their blocks were full, and then some of their nodes went down. So it didn't work then, ironically. I suppose it all goes down to,
you could say that it didn't work for a good reason, though.
well,
Is that fair
it
enough?
was being used, or it had traffic on it. I guess this is a criticism of blockchains who I think if it works, it works. If it works for you, use it. I suppose, is it a long-term solution? It's like, the roads are empty because you added an extra lane, and that works better than the road that is smaller, which is full of traffic. But if that road, ever gets enough traffic, you haven't solved the problem. So I guess that's the criticism of, say, something like Bitcoin Cash is, it works because there's a lot less traffic. If it had the traffic of Bitcoin, how would all these scaling issues, a lot of the small block proponents said would happen, would they actually start to happen? You start to see it. But having said that, I think, if you're use what works, I'm kind of laissez-faire. If it works for you, like, it's technology, you shouldn't become too tribal about it. If it works for you, use it, kind of thing, and give it a chance.
I caught the exact top in the market as well on Saturday night.
A Bitcoin Cash?
It was like $1,200 or something when I gave him his thing, and then that collapsed that night. So
so I actually started off in the Bitcoin meetup, where everybody, before Bitcoin Cash, it was Roger's meetup, right? So everybody were kind of big blockers. So yeah, I have a lot of sympathies, and I was a big blocker, and I have a lot of friends who are big blockers. I kind of respect their opinion, but I think it's like there's like two sides to it, right? There's like the tribal side, and like, this is a real Bitcoin, this is real Bitcoin. But then there's I think there is a respectable technical debate to have there. And if there are differences, people split and do their own thing. I'm all for that kind of thing.
Yeah. I've been getting into, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I've been getting into Decred a lot over the last few days. I've been really checking it out.
It's actually quite interesting to Lightning, actually, but go on. There's a connection with Lightning.
Well, they're trying to add a Lightning layer to it, if that's the right terminology. But I've just been playing around with the wallet and the staking and the Politeia, the community and stuff. And, there's a good mixing operation built into the wallet. And I think it's a really good thing. It's a really good product they've got there.
I quite like the Decred developers. They seem quite sound. So
they don't have the network yet.
Well, they actually helped in a way. They actually helped Lightning Network to kind of get started in a way. So the Decred guys, they made a version of Bitcoin D, the node software, in Golang. And that when the most popular implementation of the Lightning Network software, they also used the Decred's Bitcoin D implementation, because obviously it's very difficult to work on Bitcoin Core and add stuff to Bitcoin Core. So it's kind of like this nice idea of, and I think we're kind of starting to see this. I'm trying to be like non-tribal and friendly. A lot of technology and works that go onto other chains, in a way, it all makes the technology stack better for all the coins, right? So a lot of the stuff that the developers did on Decred kind of helped Lightning with Neutrino kind of get the ball rolling. And yeah, so I kind of like it, but I guess, I'm a programmer, so I get less tribal. It's a good thing about being technical.
It's quite interesting what you've described there, because ever since it began, I see I'm a physical mining investor. That's my background. I was heavily into gold and silver and the whole fiat money narrative, and I used to invest in mining companies, and you get these cycles, mining booms and mining winters, and the mining winters are like the crypto winters, only worse, and the booms just aren't as good as the crypto booms. But you have sensible mining companies like BHP Billiton and Rio Tinto that have got mines all over the world and are genuine producers, and then you have mid-tier producers, and then you have guys who found an asset that they're developing, and then you have out and out explorers. And it used to be that the big guns, BHP and so on, would develop their own mines, and they would have exploration budgets. But now what they do is they just let the whole junior market get on with itself. And if there's something really good, if somebody in the junior market, and there's all sorts of speculation that goes on, but if somebody in the junior market makes a significant discovery and they develop it and it's shown that there's something there, then BHP or Rio Tinto will simply acquire them. And I suppose Bitcoin's a bit like that, is that people can go out and make their mistakes in the shit coins, and you'll get scams, but you'll get genuine technical innovation, and you'll get this and that. And then Bitcoin can go, oh, actually, that works really well. And that can then get absorbed into Bitcoin. Is that a good analogy or not?
Yeah, I think that's a point made by a lot of kind of Bitcoin maximalists that, anything that works on an altcoin or will find its way back into Bitcoin if it's useful, albeit it'll be a lot later. And I think Bitcoin is generally... So I did a lot of work on Ethereum. Well, not a lot of work. I did some work on Ethereum. And it's kind of, Ethereum is very move fast and break things, which is like no on Bitcoin. Bitcoin is, it's like... it's just like trying to build an airplane. You want to be safe and conservative, but there are ideas, there are things on Ethereum that Ethereum at the moment is probably pioneering, such as like ZK Starks and all this kind of tech, which I think if it works, people have started to say, oh, we could put this into Bitcoin. It's just a lot harder to put stuff into Bitcoin because it's like decentralized, where Ethereum, for example, isn't. It hard forks whenever it wants, if there's a hack, it'll hard fork or if it's thing, but that's fine if people are aware of that, and they're happy, whatever. So yeah, I think that's a fair analogy. I think
not for the purists.
Yeah, it's not for the purists. Like, again, I think people like to compare things to Bitcoin standard, which maybe it's probably not the sensible thing to do. But having said that, there is a lot of like misinformation about shitcoins where people will think it's better than Bitcoin or it does something, but really it's a lot more experimental and it might not last.
Is Ethereum going to sort out its gas fee issue?
Well, like they're trying to, but it's, again, this is so I was in Bitcoin before Ethereum came out, and I was doing gaming on Bitcoin like in 2013-14. And people left Bitcoin to go to Ethereum when it launched because the Bitcoin fees were too high. And I told them, the Ethereum fees will go high once it starts to be used. But Ethereum was seen as, no, they'll just make the blocks bigger. It's fine, we don't have that, they're open to making the blocks bigger. But yet, the same thing on Ethereum with the gas. It's a blockchain. Blockchains don't scale. They're very difficult to scale in a decentralized way. So they do have stuff they're working on, tech, but... The problem with Ethereum is Bitcoin can scale easier because it only has to deal with one token, Bitcoin, right? It's a lot, but with Ethereum it's a general blockchain, right? It wants to be a world computer. People can issue their own tokens and NFTs. It's an order of magnitude more difficult to scale in a decentralized way. So I don't know. The market will find a way to do it. I guess the market will, at the moment, it's just basically scaling it in centralized ways, which is maybe it's fine if you're using it for low value things. But I'm a bit skeptical on whether Ethereum can scale just from a development point of view. But then again, there's smarter people than me working on Ethereum. I've
owned Ethereum in the past, and I actually think a lot of the crypto billionaires have made their money in Ethereum
okay.
more than Bitcoin, because what tends to happen is I've noticed that particularly early in a bull market, Bitcoin will usually move first, and then the others will catch up. Ethereum will catch up. And so a lot of the time, Bitcoin moves first, a bit like gold and silver again, where gold moves first, and then everyone piles into silver as the catch-up trade. But then silver ends up going up by more than Bitcoin, and Ethereum often ends up going up by more than Bitcoin does.
A smaller market cap.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And so, if you look at that bull market that ended in 2016, 2017, I think Ethereum went from $1 to $1,400, whereas Bitcoin went from like $200 to $20,000 over the course of those few years. So,
it's like penny stocks, maybe, right? It's like penny stocks, right? You can like make a lot more money, but yeah,
precisely goes down by more as well. But I will say again, we were talking about the practical use cases of things. I make these comic songs, as I'm sure you know, and I wanted to, as a test, release a couple of my comic songs, the originals, as NFTs with my signature on them. And I thought that was rather a nice little idea, and I could do 17 million F-offs. I thought that might make a nice NFT. And I just was put off by the gas prices, because it was just too much.
How much are the gas prices now? Like, how much was it?
When I was looking at it, I needed to move some Ethereum from one place to another. So that was going to cost me like $300 or something.
Really?
And then
$300? Wow.
it was something like that. And then I would need to spend a similar amount to upload it. I can't remember the exact amounts, but like I'm the sort of guy that I really object to paying bank charges and Forex charges. And,
Sure.
you know, so I'm always the guy who'll try and, you know, save 100 quid on a Forex charge or something stupid. I know they just piss me off. And so that just was a deterrent. And, you know, for low level art,
Mm.
you know, $100 art, $50 art, whatever, the equivalent of the guy painting little things when you're on holiday and you buy a picture of the beach or something, you know, that kind of shit, there will be a market for that in NFTs eventually. You know, Ethereum kills that market. And if we're going to go into a world where we tokenize everything, you know, you can't do it on Ethereum because gas fees are too
I find this funny because, like I said, I like back in 2015, maybe a bit later, 16, I was doing NFTs on Bitcoin. We didn't call them NFTs, we called them tokens. The protocols on Bitcoin to do this, and they still existed today. And the fees were like becoming like $5 or $10, and everybody said, this is crazy, it's not going to work. Ethereum's just been launched, let's go and issue our tokens on Ethereum instead. But now to hear it's $300 or something, which I could understand paying that to issue a token on a immutable blockchain like Bitcoin, but like one where Ethereum, where it's like, it's a lot less, I think you're a lot less guaranteed your token will actually stay on the blockchain because like they're upgrading their protocol to like completely new stack pretty much soon, right? And that, who knows what's going to happen there. And they've undone transactions when the DAO hack happened. I think it's quite a lot to pay for to have something issued on that much on Ethereum. But I just find it funny that like people jump shipped on Bitcoin when it was like $5 or $10 to do it on Ethereum.
Yeah.
But like,
by the way,
Bitcoin Cash has tokens as well.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it does. That $300 I cited, that needs, you know,
yeah, okay,
going to fact check me.
Sure, okay. Well, anyway, it's a lot.
It was stupid. It was certainly a 3-digit sum at one point.
Yeah, well, again, this is the thing. Like, in my opinion, it's like,
and it shouldn't be. It should be 10 cents or something, shouldn't it?
Well, again, it's like you're paying for space in blocks on the blockchain that all the nodes have to store, you know, indefinitely, right? How much is that worth? You know, it's like that's so. I was a big blocker, and it was actually issuing tokens that made me on Bitcoin tokens that made me a bit of a small blocker because I had a game that was a little bit popular, like it was kind of popular in Bitcoin terms, but not like real game terms, right? And I was filling up a decent percentage of the block space, and I thought, like, if my one little silly game fills up this space with me issuing tokens, how can, you know, all these games with issuing hundreds of thousands, millions of tokens and all these transactions, how can that really scale on a blockchain base? So I think it really needs layer 2 solutions where if you make a token, it's not necessarily stored in a block, right? And I think people are working on that. It's just, you know, it just takes time for this stuff to come out. So I think NFTs is, I was speaking to a game developer today, and he was like, he basically said, now is like the NFT bull market. And it's frustrating because, you know, whatever technology you choose now is the wrong choice, but you don't want to be late to the party. You got to choose something, you know, because it's, you know, this is like the bull market. You got to invest in something, right? So it's a little bit of a dilemma, right? You know, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting though. But anyway, I suppose we should introduce you to our.
Sure. Let me ask you one last question.
Yeah.
As a gamer, are you familiar with Paul Wedgwood?
Well,
does that name ring a bell?
I have a Wedgwood mug. Does that help? Different Wedgwood, I'd imagine.
Different to not the same game. No, he's a renowned gamer who I've been talking to. I wondered if you happen to know him.
No, sorry.
Go on. That's cool. Let's intro me.
Yeah, hey, so welcome to the MintGox podcast. I just went straight in there because I think it's a natural way just to start a conversation. But yeah, we have on the show today somebody who I've been wanting to get on for a while because I've become quite a fan of his work. And I'm not just saying that because he's on the show. We have Dominic Frisby, who I would say you're kind of a Renaissance man. You're like a voiceover artist, a stand-up comedian, a musician, an author, a commentator, all those things I would imagine. But
freelancer,
yeah.
Freelancer who likes money, who wants to earn a living with loads of kids at school.
There you go. Well, let's just kind of start with your history. Like, obviously this is like a Bitcoin podcast. So like, what's been your history into Bitcoin? Like, how did you get into Bitcoin? I know you were quite early. You wrote the first book on Bitcoin, or the first book that was actually published, I would say.
The first book from a recognized publisher, that one there, Bitcoin, the Future of Money. I wrote it in 2013, 2014.
Wow,
and it was published in 2014. And I got completely obsessed when I was writing it with who Satoshi Nakamoto is, and so I did. And I think I got prosecutor's bias, but I probably did more work on anyone analyzing the text of
Sure,
Satoshi
no.
and all that. But I think it's a pretty good read even now. And but I got into it because I'd made a bit of money in the noughties, and I started investing in gold and silver. And when you invest in gold and silver, that same narrative that comes with Bitcoin exists. You know, the fiat money, the dollar, debt, money printing, all the rest of it. And so, you know, and I wrote a film called Four Horsemen, which was very popular at one point, about the financial crisis. I co-wrote that and narrated it. And I wrote another book called Life After the State, which I think is the first published book to mention Bitcoin. And I was sure that the root of so many problems that we have in the world is in our flawed system of money. And if we're to save the world and make it a better place and make it more equal and get rid of the inequality gap, but especially between generations, then we need a sound system of money in which people are rewarded for their labor, and the reward they receive for their labor keeps its value. And so I was a big advocate of gold and silver. And then while I was writing that, Bitcoin came along, and everyone was getting in touch with me saying, you got to look at this thing, Bitcoin. And so I just sort of fell into it there. So I came into it as a gold bug, and there were quite a few of us who came into it. I looked in my emails. The first email I have that mentions Bitcoin was from December 2010, and it was 22 cents at the time. And there was an article in PC World, and I subscribed to this really peculiar newsletter that tells you how to escape from your country and live offshore and become a sovereign individual, one of those kind of newsletters. And he would always mention technological innovation, and he mentioned Bitcoin at 22 cents. And I thought, oh, that sounds like a good idea, and forgot about it. And then people started getting in touch, and by this point, Bitcoin was like $1. And I was going, no, I heard about it at $5. I'm not buying it at $1. It's gone up 5 times. I'm not doing that. Then it went to $2. I'm not buying it now. It's doubled again, and so on and so forth. So I was a bit slow to buy it. And of course, what I should have done is, you know, just buy 1,000 or 10,000, whatever, and just forget about it. But anyway.
Yeah, well, I think you would have people who have that story. I often say you would have bought it at $1 and sold it at $2. So don't beat yourself up too much.
100%,
The
100%.
people who forget about it, they're the ones who are are the lucky ones in
Yeah.
a way.
The guys who forget their password, and I've got a great story like that. 20 Again, it would have been 2013, 2014. There was this festival in Cornwall called Port Eliot, which is like a sort of, you know, festival where you camp and you go and listen to concerts and talks and things like that, like Glastonbury, but for slightly more older and more educated people. And there was a very hipster ice cream van that was selling, and it said accepting Bitcoin. And my friend said to me, "What's Bitcoin?" And I said, "Well, I'm writing a book about it actually." And I explained what it was, and I gave him enough Bitcoin on his phone to buy us each an ice cream. And he then went to try and buy this ice cream, but this festival was in the middle of nowhere, and nobody could get a signal on his phone. And where the actual ice creams were, the guy selling the ice cream saying accepting Bitcoin couldn't get a signal on his phone to accept the Bitcoin.
Wow. Yeah.
So my friend ended up paying with cash and kept the Bitcoins that I'd just given to him. And then at the end of that 2016, 2017 bull market, I remember he phoned me up. He said, hey, remember those Bitcoins you gave me? And I was like, oh, yeah, I do. He said, well, it was on about 3 phones ago, but I found the old phone and I got the wallet going and I got the Bitcoins and I sold the Bitcoins and I bought myself a car.
Wow. Yeah.
So
I bet he regrets
the 2
that now,
ice
though.
creams, of course he does. But I imagine he's still got the car, but 2 ice creams became a car. So that's a
Yeah.
pretty good return on your investment.
No, I've heard all these stories. Like my brother, he was on holiday in Spain, and this guy at the beach was talking to him about like the lizard people and the Rothschilds and generally kind of conspiracy theories. And then he said, "Oh, I've got this. Like, I'll send you some Bitcoin." And they didn't have like wallets at the time, so he got out his laptop and said, "Get your computer. I'll send them over." But my brother declined because he thought he was like sending him a virus from this guy who was talking about the lizards and whatnot. And he just ignored it. And then it was 300 Bitcoins he was going to send him. But Yeah, but Gavin Andresen had a faucet. You could go on the website, you would email him, and he would just give you 50 bitcoins, right? Back in the day. It's
Yeah,
all these.
I think he sold most of his. I don't
Is
think
that
he
Mike
has
Hearn
that
you're
many.
thinking of? I'm not
I
sure
was
about
actually
Gavin.
thinking of Gavin Anderson because
Okay,
I've got it just with a mate of his. I won't say his name, but he
sure.
told me he sold them and put them into mutual funds or something like that because he was just pretty, sensible investments. I'm not sure, but Mike
Yeah.
Hearn sold all of his, did he?
Oh, well, he famously kind of rage quit, didn't he? Basically,
Oh, did
when like obviously the block size didn't increase. He famously made a blog saying Bitcoin is dead. I've sold all my Bitcoin. I know people at the meetup who did the same. A guy just said once there was a famous meeting. I think it was in Hong Kong, maybe, but wherever the developers didn't agree to do this kind of this block size increase, and a lot of people just said Bitcoin's dead, and he sold thousands. My friend did
he? When was
thousands.
this?
Oh, well, maybe probably like 2016, I guess, maybe 15. I don't know.
I think there's going to be some kind of psychological condition for people who sold Bitcoin too early. And I know a couple of cases where, when I say I know of a couple of cases where people got hacked or they lost their Bitcoins or whatever. And I know two people who've committed suicide
Okay.
because they know that there will never again come an opportunity to make that much money. And, I got hacked back in the day and lost all of mine. And this would have been it was around about the time that my book came out. So 2014, 2015, I can't remember exactly when, but I had a hissy fit
I
because
can
I had
imagine.
at the time it was, tens, hundreds of thousands, not the millions of billions it would be today. But I didn't want to rebuy that money. I didn't want to, because I felt then I was taking the loss twice because I already had the loss of the Bitcoins. If I then had to buy back the position that I previously had, and then Bitcoin went to zero, do you see what I mean?
Yeah, no, I
I,
can
I
definitely.
didn't want to lose the money twice, and I had a bit of a thing, and it was, and so when Bitcoin went on that bull market 2016 and it went all the way up like it did, that caused me. I had some pretty sleepless nights knowing that I could have been a 100 millionaire, billionaire or whatever. And I think a lot of people, that small syndrome, that it was only a sleepless night to me, but to other people who had taken a bigger hit than I took, like all the people at MTGox, for example, how many people at MTGox must have been, would be billionaires now if they hadn't lost those Bitcoins? And, that would make it, that would be enough to drive some people to suicide. It's pretty tough knowing that you could have been a billionaire and now you're not.
Yeah, well, no, for sure. I guess are we going to coin the term Frisbee syndrome here, or no?
No, I don't want my name. I don't want my name associated with it.
I can imagine. Yeah, like you said, like again, I was living in Japan at when kind of Bitcoin was like becoming popular, right? And like that's MintGox is just down the road, right? And the meetup was full of people who were just devastated, right? A lot of people have like as men often do, they a bit more financially reckless and the wife doesn't know, right? But they've
Shit.
all that kind of stuff. But I think it have a somewhat happy ending because didn't they get the coin? So MintGox became solvent. It actually, because of the Bitcoin price rise, well, I guess in dollar terms. So Mark Capellas, he because they got
reconsidered the dollars they'd lost, but not the Bitcoin.
Yes, but I think when it was hacked, the Bitcoins they found had appreciated more than the dollar value that was lost. So on paper, it was like the first instance of a company going bankrupt, then becoming solvent again, like more. And I think Mark Capellas, technically, I think he didn't take the Bitcoin, I'm not sure. But technically, he became like a billionaire or something, like just with because technically, as the director of the company, there was still his some of the Bitcoins were still his. So his share was like worth $1 billion or something like that. And this was like when it was hit 20K. Now it's like 50, 60K, but I don't know exactly what's happened there. So,
but all those guys would have dealt with the loss at the time.
Yeah.
Then every time Bitcoin is on the news, Bitcoin record highs, every time they see that headline, that's the point at which it
like seeing that hot girlfriend that you let slip away became a movie star.
Exactly the same. Exactly
the same. Yeah, no, it's quite fascinating. I actually made Bitcoin from getting scammed, ironically. Were you familiar with Butterfly Labs? With the mining
Why do
scam?
I know that name?
It
Yeah, I
was
know that. Tell me the story. I know the name. I've
they
forgotten it.
basically they're a mining company and they made miners. So when I first got into Bitcoin, I thought I'm a genius. I've got one Bitcoin. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to sell that Bitcoin and buy a Bitcoin making machine, i.e., a miner, and then I'll make more Bitcoin. Obviously, I bought a miner, and then it's not that simple. But they basically had new miners which were coming soon, which were faster, better, and stronger. So you could pre-order them, right? So I pre-ordered them, paying in Bitcoin. I convinced my brother to do the same, and then the miners never came. I don't want to say anything that's liable, but apparently they were like mining them themselves. They made these miners and realized, hey, why are we selling them? Why don't we just use them ourselves? So they were testing them for longer, and by the time they'd finished testing them and keeping the test bitcoins, the miners were worthless and they couldn't ship, and it all collapsed. But before they collapsed, they were doing refunds. So I think I paid in Bitcoin, but they refunded me in Bitcoin on the dollar value I paid in. Because the Bitcoin price dropped, I actually got more Bitcoin back than I paid for it. So in a way, they kind of,
Fun.
yeah. So I was like,
Yeah.
I kind of, I got out a bit lucky on that one, right? So
We had when I was at Cypherpunk Holdings, we had shares in this big data center, and they had lots of ASIC computers that some Bitcoin miner had abandoned after the last previous winter, and they were trying to mine Bitcoin and Litecoin or whatever, and they were making a right mess of it, and they were losing money, so they stopped doing it. And at the time, Grin, do you remember Grin? That privacy coin Grin had just come out.
yeah,
Grin
Mimble
and
Wimble
Bean, and
stuff. Yeah.
yeah, and we were like quite excited about that early on, and we were like, you should mine this coin now while it's early on, and so they did, and they mined a couple of other coins, and it worked for them. Our advice worked for them, but the idea is that we were gonna then we were going to give them some money to mine the coins, and they were going to give us the coins, and they just uh, kept the coins and took the credit, and then sold them on the open market at a price way higher than what we'd actually agreed to mine them in the first place. I remember thinking, "Cool, blimey, you cannot trust anyone."
Well, that's don't trust, verify is like the Bitcoin
Yeah,
motto, right?
yeah.
Yeah, I kind of think all these stories that it's just there's gonna be more and more interesting stories, and probably us too. We've been in Bitcoin for a while. I always think maybe in 10, 20 years time they're going to be like legends. When one Bitcoin is like something a billionaire has, or perhaps it's gonna like
Well, there's quite an interesting theory. If all the millionaires in the world had 1% of their assets in Bitcoin, then I think the Bitcoin price would be like $100,000 a Bitcoin, something like that. I can't remember the precise number, but that's that's a reasonable
yeah,
assumption that every millionaire in the world has 1% in Bitcoin,
yeah.
and there are more and more millionaires each year.
Is that a millionaire in today's fiat valuation? Maybe the
Yeah,
meaning of millionaire changes, right? I was a
million
millionaire
dollar.
in Japan in yen, but it wasn't much. I think one
I'm
yen was
thinking
worth $1 at the
million
time.
dollar,
Yeah,
million
yeah,
dollar.
yeah. No, I think that was something that like I got into Bitcoin like mainly from a technical point of view, but the thing that really just made me just get it was like when my friend told me there's only 21 million. I said, oh well, imagine if there's only $21 million, how much would $1 be worth? And that was like,
Yeah,
those are just kind of, um,
that hooks a lot of people. When you're shilling Bitcoin, you're telling people you should buy Bitcoin. The limited supply thing. There's an intrinsic understand. I think human beings have an intrinsic, even really thick ones, they still get the value of scarcity.
for sure. I think a lot of people don't realize other coins don't necessarily have it. Like Ethereum doesn't have a cap, I believe. You know,
No,
so yeah.
other coins do, but I do still think though that it's almost a problem in terms of persuading new people into the space that Bitcoin is, $55,000, because most people new people go, well, I don't want to invest $55,000. I haven't got $55,000.
Wife said
I'll,
this to
I'll
me
put a grand,
yesterday.
I'll put a grand in, and you're like, well, okay, fine. So you put a grand in and own a 50th of a Bitcoin. That's
Sure.
fine. But most people don't realize that you can own a 50th of a Bitcoin. They think you have to buy a whole one. And then you go, well, it's divisible to 8 decimal places, and then you start explaining decimal places, and you lost them again.
Yeah. Again, it's like, what do they call it? There's something biased, denomination bias or something. I can't remember what the name is, but yeah, that's why a lot of there were like kind of proposals among. I guess they couldn't, not at a core level, but as a community level, that we should stop saying Bitcoin, we should say bits, or even in Lightning Network we say Sats. So when we do a
Yeah,
prize
well,
giveaway, we say 1,000,000 Sats rather than 0.001.
that whole Sats thing is really good. I noticed that actually, and
It's a lot of
trying
fun.
to get people to think in terms of Sats rather than Bitcoins, because that gives the space a lot more upside.
Well, it's crazy. Like, so we have games, and in our games,
How many Sats to a cent at the moment?
well, like one Sat is 100 millionth of a Bitcoin. So hold on, let me just. I think it's very low, but it's increased. So one Sat is 0.00056. Quite a lot.
Of a cent.
Of a cent.
Of a
Yeah.
dollar.
Yeah.
Of a dollar.
Oh no, it's $0.0005. Yeah. So it's so in cents that would be that times 100. So would be 0.05 cents, I think, something like that.
0.05.
Maybe.
So
yeah.
there'd be 100 Sats to a cent. Or something like that. No,
100 Sats is
20 Sats to a cent.
100 Sats is 5 cents. So
okay, that's right.
Yeah.
20 Sats to a cent.
Yeah, I have a game that gives away like 10 and 20 Sats. People just love it. I don't know. It's just like, I guess people play games and they get like kind of fake game tokens, and there's like dopamine kind of Skinner box type.
Yeah.
So, but because it is a little bit of Bitcoin, it just adds to it. But yeah, it's surprising.
Yeah. They love it. I did in Edinburgh a couple of years ago. I did Dominic Frisby's financial game show, and all the prizes were forms of money. And like the booby prize, if you got knocked out, was a Zimbabwe $50 billion note. And as you went through, you could win little bits of Bitcoin or little bits of silver, and then there was a fiat cash prize at the end. And I would always give people the choice between whether you wanted the Bitcoin or the silver, even though they still had the same nominal value. And most people chose the silver. Interestingly, when offered an actual silver coin, I guess because it's tangible and it's there in real life. But younger people would take the Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think I've seen similar videos where somebody I think it was probably not now, but it's a few years back, where he went to buy like stuff off hot dog vendors, and he said, the guy would say, "Thank you, $5," and the guy say, "Would you take one Bitcoin?" And this is like probably 2015 or something, or 16, and the guy's like, "No, give me $10." It wasn't one. I think it's like 100 Bitcoin, something stupid, right? But
I remember talking to a homeless bloke, and he had a well, I was drunk at a pub one time, and somebody had given him some Bitcoin a few years earlier.
Is it Happy George?
By London Bridge.
Go on. There's a separate story, but finish your story
I don't know
first.
the story, but I remember saying to him, if you've got the phone, get that phone, get that wallet, because you're probably worth several thousand quid. And he was a bit sort of, but I think he said he still had the phone somewhere. So
okay, hopefully, yeah. Well,
yeah.
It's amazing that homeless people have phones these days. That's pretty nice.
Yeah, well, that's.
Well, they have to. You can't give them cash, can you?
I went to. This is before the lockdown, but St Martin in the Fields, where the homeless charity is in Charing Cross. I remember going there one morning, and they're all queued up, sat on the floor. It was a sunny morning, and they're all sat on the floor waiting for their breakfast, and they're all just sat there playing on their phones. I'm like, wow, it's better being homeless. The homeless person in 2020 has got access to more information than Marie Antoinette.
Yeah,
they have a better lifestyle.
Yeah, they have
the same status.
Access to the Library of Alexandria times a million or something, And when I was in Australia, Atlassian, which is a very big kind of computer company, they do a lot of billion-dollar company. I think they had a scheme where they would get homeless people and just like give them a laptop and like get them in as like intern programmers, just because it's really low access to become a programmer. Just have a laptop and you can, if you've got a fairly decent brain, you can do some simple coding. And a lot of homeless people aren't stupid. They just have like drug problems or something, right? You know.
It's
So
a
yeah,
mental thing.
yeah, for sure. You know. So yeah. But yeah, but let's get on to. I wanted actually to talk about some of your projects. So I'm just going to share the screen
Sure.
here a little bit. Let me try it. So well, let me just click around for a bit, very unprofessionally. Where's that screen gone? Here. Yeah. So we mentioned you have your Bitcoin book, which I believe is still on sale in Amazon, right?
Yeah, well, the audiobook's pretty good, written by
Audiobook.
me.
But I quite enjoyed this. So this is actually probably quite interesting to our viewers. It's so Dominic Frisby, as he mentioned, he actually has some musical ability, and also he's a good storyteller. So I believe you were inspired by rock operas or something to.
Well, I had this theory that uh, the the boom in audio that we've experienced since podcasts became a thing early in the century is to do with the fact that the human brain absorbs information through the ear better than it does by reading. And we only um, started writing things down. Sorry, somebody's just texted me. We only started writing things down as a way to transfer information over distance and over time.
Hmm,
But actually, biologically, we absorb words better through the ear. Put it that way.
sure.
And so, as a result, we've got this huge boom in audio books and podcasts because people are taking all the information in orally rather than having to read it. I know so much of what I learned through listening to podcasts, especially when I'm walking. And so, so park that thought for a moment. And then what I thought is nobody in podcasts and audiobooks is exploring the relationship between story and music. And you remember, um, media is determined by the technology available at the time.
Sure.
So, for example, we only got LPs, the album, after the Second World War when they extended the amount of play you could have on an LP on a vinyl record to 30. Was it 33 inches, and you could have like 15 or 20 minutes on each side.
Sure.
And so, as a result of that new vinyl technology, then we got the album came along as a format. And then in the sort of late 90s, early noughties, with the arrival of iPods and iTunes and Spotify and all the rest of it, the album kind of died a death and was replaced by the playlist. Or I suppose you could say it was a compilation album. But anyway, so the albums, and I used to love the old concept albums of the 70s, things like War of the Worlds,
Hmm.
where there'd be stories told to music. Prokofiev, Peter and the Wolf was another great example for kids. Even uh, there were all those concept albums of the 70s. I just had a mind blank. The Who. Um, so I wanted to sort of explore that, but for a modern age. So I wanted to write a musical drama with me narrating with my great English actor's voice, telling a story to music. So that was the basic of the idea. And then I'd always wanted to write something about Bitcoin, and I'm very interested in privacy as a theme. So one thing and another, I came up with this idea of this is a drama set 10 years in the future where um, a police officer in rural Devon investigating the rise of county lines in his area, county lines being drug dealers, with sophisticated city ways, taking their horrible drugs and bringing them to a naive, unsophisticated rural population and getting them all hooked. This is going on in the UK at the moment, and it's really quite
Yeah. Sad
nasty.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it really is just these city guys taking advantage of the rural. Anyway, um, so there's a police officer who's investigating that in rural Devon, the most overlooked part of the UK, by the way. And he discovers that a lot of these county lines dealers have been using these coats of invisibility. And he starts investigating these coats of invisibility. And he discovers that they've been invented by uh, a radical group of optical physicists who are called the shadow punks, who are concerned about state and corporate invasion of privacy, and so have invented these invisibility coats to protect against that. And obviously, it's a metaphor for Bitcoin. And some people are using these invisibility codes in the same way that we would use privacy coins, because we don't want the state knowing about what we're doing, or we don't want corporations knowing about what we're doing. But of course, some other people are abusing it and using it to do horrible and nasty things. And that's an essential dilemma when you talk about something like the dark net. You know, we can all be libertarian and go, oh, the dark net's great, blah, blah, blah. But it does get used for some really dodgy stuff that you know, any, you know, kiddie porn or something.
Sure.
So there's a really nasty side to it. And of course, what I might consider nasty, somebody else might consider normal. So that's just my opinion. But there's an essential dilemma there. Anyway, our hero, the police officer, all to this incredible rock soundtrack played by this Israeli guitarist called Asaf Zohar, who, let me tell you, is a dude, goes on this hunt to find out who has invented these invisibility codes, and he goes to get to the bottom of it. And then of course, the whole thing's a metaphor for Bitcoin. And eventually he finds the inventor of these coats. I think I called him Natoshi Sakamoto or something.
Samakoto.
Really stupid. Samakoto, did I call him? Something like that. But I think it's only an hour long, but it's a great listen. You know, you have an hour long car journey and crank the volume up and listen to it.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. So I listened to it when I was taking the dog to the vet. So like, 20-minute walk each side. And yeah, no, I I'm not just saying this, I really did quite like it, and I actually thought it would actually make a great concept for a video game.
Oh, really?
I think so too, and that's it. Go on, sorry.
If you know how to design, I got approached by a video game designer. I don't know what happened to him or her. I assume it was a him. Video game designers are all blokes, aren't they? Are they? Mostly. But anyway,
traditionally, I guess, but yeah.
But yeah, I guess if you want to design a video game about it, you know how to do that shit. Be my guest.
Well, I think, there's actually a popular game that's come out now, which is the most popular game, called Cypherpunk. So it's kind of like a similar type vibe, right? And it's kind of, but I think to do it justice, it needs a bigger studio. I actually did think, because I make more indie games, it might be nice to make like a kind of short concept game at some point when I have time. So I might chat to you about that at some point, But
100%.
There's actually a link to, maybe you didn't realize, but there's actually a link between this and another part of your book, which we'll talk about in a bit, the Daylight Robbery book. But there's actually a video game called Metal Gear Solid Sons of Liberty, and it starts off with the character that has an invisibility cloak that he.
Oh, right.
So I kind of like this. You got a kind of a connection there with your tax and the invisibility thing. So I'll have to send you that link. But it worked very, very well. And funny enough, that game was actually Metal Gear Solid. Craig Wright stole some of the story for some of his for his own narrative. He actually copied some of the plots. And people who played this game, we realized, wait a minute, so Craig Wright had this thing about the Tulip Trust, and that was taken from the Philosopher's Trust from this game. And he even used, on one tweet, they had the same font that the video game used. It was quite. And people thought, like, wait a minute, you've just taken this off. So there's like some interesting, parallels and connections between all these things. But yeah, it is really interesting. And for viewers watching, it's only about 50 minutes long, I think. So and I think what really works well is, like, I start to listen to audiobooks now, but sometimes a lot of words going in your ear can be quite tiring. Sometimes you kind of miss a paragraph or something, you zone out. But when you balance that with music, it's a lot easier to take in, I feel. It's a lot more easier listening experience, and also the music can say stuff you don't have to say with words, I think. So
that was the idea. Like, there was a good car chase, where there was, and I remember thinking, I didn't need to say anything. I just let the music kind of did the car chase. But yeah, I agree. And I think, as an artist talking now, I think that relationship between spoken word and audio has not been properly explored yet, and there's a lot of scope for interesting.
Oh, are you still there? I can't hear you. Did your mic turn off?
No, I'm back here. Sorry,
okay,
somebody just called me up.
No, it's right.
Yeah, but I do think, as an artist, there's a lot more room for exploration between sound and spoken word. The problem is, like, it's really hard. I mean, maybe hopefully NFTs or something will change it, but it's really hard to promote audiobooks because
Really?
you promote it on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter, but my experience is it's hard to get people to go from one platform to another. It's fine if you promote something that's on the same platform,
Got you.
and there's just not that much money in audiobooks, and it's really kind of
Probably in books as well, right?
whatever's
Yeah.
the latest thing that's been narrated by Stephen Fry
Mm,
always gets the top spot. It's really hard to get noticed on
mm.
to get on the front page of Audible. And then even if you do get on it, there's just very little money in it. So until the reward structure changes a little bit, and maybe somebody can invent a crypto audio book, crypto coin or something that sorts it out. But until you get, because writing music is very, very labor intensive. If you think of how long, 2 or 3 minute song, the amount of, that can take months of mixing and doing a thing just to get a 2 or 3 minute song. And then that gets as many hits as me just talking to you on YouTube. You're like, what's the point? I'll just sit and talk to people on YouTube. I get the same hits, the same rewards. But so until there's some way of rewarding that spoken word thing. And the other thing is we're normalized to expect podcasts for nothing, not to have to pay for them.
We've been
So
spoiled by
like
freemium, haven't we? Yeah.
we have. So that all needs to be sorted out. And I don't hear a lot of people talking about it, going, we need to fix this
I won't
in
lie.
the same way
My
that
first instinct was when I heard about it was I just automatically went to YouTube and typed it in to see if it was on YouTube, right? Because a lot of audiobooks are, right. If someone's
yeah.
so and they're like, no,
There's
not,
a guy actually. I keep getting emails from him. I don't know who he is, but sorry, I get emails from somebody who's sneaking on him. But he's got a website where he's pirated loads of audiobooks, stuck him on the website, and then he asks people to give him a tip because they can get the audiobook for nothing. And you're like, that's stolen goods. But anyway, it
I
is what it
guess
is.
I think this is like a broader economic problem, and like people have talked about this, like in the music area, right? I think musicians were ones to really early jump onto blockchains. Like Imogen Heap, I think, was playing with
Yeah,
tokens as well before Ethereum. And they really kind of want this way to kind of have some sort of direct relationship with the audience. A thing that people are interested in, for example, in DeFi or NFTs, is the idea that you can have like the royalties, for example, built into the token, right? So if
yeah.
if people trade the token, then like the royalties are sent back to the creator. But I don't know, it's
Yeah,
difficult.
that's if that can be made to work, then that'll be great.
Yeah, but then I guess there's that issue between the link of the actual token and the link to the it's obviously it's not doesn't represent the song, but like what does it give you? It's like a certificate, or even the way it's like an autograph, I would say. It's really,
Yeah, well,
but
I was
maybe
thinking about that. So let's say, because you don't, if you could sell the original, let's say I took the original Michael Jackson Thriller video,
mhm.
I could, and let's say I was Michael Jackson and I owned it, I could sell you that original Thriller video as an NFT, but that wouldn't necessarily give you the right to the copyright of the song Thriller and all the royalties
No,
that the song Thriller gets. So you might then go, well, what's the point of owning the original? When you're like, you own the original of Thriller. And the fact that that song is played on loads of radios and gets loads of airplay, and Michael Jackson's a big star and blah 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 blah, actually makes the value of your original NFT increase, even if you don't actually own the royalties.
it
It's
could
like
do,
owning it's like the
but
difference between owning a growth stock and a dividend paying stock.
yeah, I suppose it could do. But I guess would I guess in a way, what you're saying is it the perceived community popularities? I guess the NFT's value is that the community says that this is the token that we are assigning to this song. There's no other connection. It's just that the community have said it is. For example, I think what happens, for example, if you issue a token on Ethereum or a blockchain and it forks, for example, right? Who has the
Yeah,
original then, right? It's like, yeah, I
it's
don't
very
know. It's
messy. The
interesting, but
NFT, that's a different argument though. That's the argument is the NFT is only as secure as the platform that it's issued on,
that's
which is
true. Yeah,
that's a whole. I mean, that's a
that's a
very important
technical.
argument,
Yeah,
but it's an argument.
yeah,
That
yeah.
makes sense. Somebody's given me some money on Zebedee. I just had a thing flash up. So
Oh,
whoever's given me
yeah.
some money
I
on
put
Zebedee,
your
thank you very much.
QR code on top. Yeah, no, like I've been experimenting with tokens like like 2014, 15 in gaming. It's something very, very interesting, but it's like technically, I think it's a challenge. So I think maybe in a few years, once somebody might crack it. Yeah, but yeah, I just wanted to finish on the Shadowpunk. Yeah, I recommend people go check it out. It's available on. I listen to it on Audible. So it's oh, where was my screen here? Yeah, no, it's really cool, and I think if you're into Bitcoin, you definitely
It's on iTunes as well.
Yeah,
iMusic or whatever it's called.
Yeah, I actually bought it twice because I bought it on iTunes, but then like my Apple wouldn't let me listen to it because I had authorized too many devices and I couldn't find the other devices to authorize it. So I just got it on Audible. Do you have any plans for other ones, or I guess
the other problem with Shadowpunk Revolution? Very sorry, I'm always moaning about my problems, but it's not really.
That's all right. Go on.
But it's just you make stuff and you just discover stuff. But like most audiobooks are like 6, 8, 10 hours long. And the Shadowpunk Revolution's only, I think it's 53 minutes or something like that. It's the length of an old album, maybe 3 sides of an album.
Deliberate to make it?
It just was. I'll tell you why that happened, because we did it as a show in Edinburgh, and shows in Edinburgh last an hour.
Makes sense.
And it's actually better if you make the show last 55 minutes, because then you've got 5 minutes to clear your shit up before the next show starts. So that's why it lasts that length. And people look at it on Audible and they go, well, I'm not using my token of this month to buy something that's only 55 minutes.
Oh, I see
buy
what you mean.
Last 8 hours because it's better value for money, even though the density of that 55 minutes, because it's got all that music in it, there's way more, if you talk about proof of work, way more work's gone into that 55 minutes than has gone into an 8-hour audio book. But anyway, that's just something we've discovered. People value audiobooks. They want length to justify their monthly token.
Can you not I suppose you could maybe sell it on your website for like Bitcoin over the Lightning Network because it's such a small payment? There could be an option.
Probably. I mean, it's only $4. I guess I could, but then I've got the issue of pirated copies doing the rounds on the net. And I signed a deal with Amazon's Audible. What's it called? ACX is like Amazon's audio book platform. And I signed a deal and I gave exclusive rights to what's his name, the owner of Amazon?
Bezos.
I gave Bezos an exclusivity deal, which I'm now regretting. Yeah, I should have done. I should just have Shadowpunk Revolution and sell it for sats.
Yeah, I think, was it Louis C.K. did that actually with his drama? He sold it for Bitcoin. He's one of the first people to do it. He had a comedy sitcom with him and Alan Alda, and he put it on his website and sold it for Bitcoin, like 2004, 15 maybe.
But if you bought that, you'd just get a download. You'd get a digital file.
Yeah, it's like...
So as soon as you got that, it, like, at least with audiobooks and Audible, they kind of protect it so you can't share the digital files.
Pretty sure I could. It's harder to do, but you can
with Audible.
Well, you could just record your sound card or something, right, and just spit it out.
Yeah, you could, but then it would be an analog recording of a digital thing, and then you can replicate the analog thing. It's time consuming, but it can be done. But I guess if I was to do that with this,
they get a file. It's not streamed.
There'd be all sorts of MP3s doing the rounds on the net, but I guess
I'm sure it's technically possible to stream it. Like when you pay, you would stream it rather than downloading it. But yeah, I guess that's another technical conversation. I'm just going to play a clip of it if you don't mind.
Maybe you could do it so that you download the thing, but it's attached to the sats that you pay for it with somehow, and. Do you see what I mean? And that gives you the ability to open it. I wonder if somebody can invent that.
Recently, what's come out, there's actually like a podcasting Lightning thing that's come out. So I think Breeze Wallet are doing it. A lot of Bitcoin podcasts are jumping onto it, where basically inside the wallet, you listen to the podcast, and the wallet is a Lightning wallet. So it's charging you kind of sats per second or per minute as you listen to the podcast. Maybe that could work.
Yeah, I tell you who's doing that as well. I heard them talking on that Marty Bent podcast.
Yes, exactly. That's where I heard it from. But yeah. Tales from the Crypt. So they're doing that, and so that could be something to explore. Quite exciting.
I do spend my whole life doing it. It's very tiring keeping up.
Oh, tell me about it.
Particularly when you're an old fogey like me.
Just even in Bitcoin itself, I remember before when you could generally have a good idea of all the tech that's going on in Bitcoin, but now it's just it's so specialized. One expert is on Lightning, one expert is on mining. It's just hard to keep up, let alone with other coins. I was going to play
Yeah, and then the other problem is if I had let's say I put my Shadowpunk Revolution on that wallet,
yeah,
and then relying on everyone, like I can only shill it to people who have that wallet.
yeah, it's a early
Do you know what I mean?
adopters.
So that's, I mean, even something like Audible, where most people have got Audible, but it's still a hell of a lot of people who don't. And as soon as they don't have Audible, well, you've lost their business.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? So there's just another
Also,
problem
it's
you've got.
exclusive. You'd have to take it off Audible, you're saying?
I would, but I don't think
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much Bezos polices that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's something to experiment with, I guess. Obviously, like,
Yeah.
if you want to make it very difficult for people to enjoy your content, sell it for Bitcoin, right? It's a lot harder to reach an audience, but then somebody's got to be first.
The Bitcoin community, they're very generous. And when they like something, the swarm of hornets all goes for the same piece of honey. If I can mix, do you see what I mean? When something goes viral, it really goes quickly.
That's actually true. When we speak to other game developers, one of our kind of selling points is that we can introduce the Bitcoin community to your game, and the Bitcoin community love new stuff that's using Bitcoin, so they'll show it some love, kind of thing, right? So it's just,
I mean, you look how like Saylor's gone from, nobody had heard of Michael Saylor a year ago, and now he's like fucking. He's more important to Bitcoin than Satoshi Nakamoto.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. He's become the new, I don't know, what would you call it? Not, I guess there's some sort of religious.
He's Bitcoin Jesus. He's replaced Roger Ver.
It's like a prophet or something. Yeah, I suppose, yeah. It's quite interesting, the analogies, but I'm sure like somebody's written like a psychological paper on it, or a sociological paper on it, I was just going to play.
The problem is Bitcoin's so wonderful. You get evangelical. You can't help it. I've heard myself doing it.
Well, it's money, right? And money is at the core of like human activity, right? So,
but it's money, but it's brilliant, and it's new technology, and it just subverts so many injustices that we have in our world in so many fantastically amusing ways. It's just brilliant. You just do get evangelical about it.
Yeah, you want to spread the word. Well, I'm sure that probably not so much now, but like when in the early days, you probably annoyed people at many a dinner party or something.
I certainly have, and but I wish I'd bought more and annoyed more people.
I get that. Like, people said they wish I annoyed them more. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got Jimmy Carr into Bitcoin.
Did you?
Yeah, I sort of know him a bit, and from the early days of comedy, and he was really worried about he had the same worries about what was going on in the world back in March that Michael Saylor did, and I helped him buy them, and I persuaded him to buy them, helped him buy some gold, and helped him buy some Bitcoin. He's made 10 times his money.
Oh, that's good. That's interesting to know. I was actually I think Jimmy Carr is a good segue onto your next book. I want to quickly talk about Daylight Robbery, which is about tax. So for people who don't know, Jimmy Carr is a very famous English comedian. Is he Irish? English-Irish, maybe. British, we'll just say.
No, he's English, but I think he's got Irish parentage.
Yeah, but he was famous because he was kind of like, he had a tax issue, let's say, and he was kind of named and shamed. I think, do you know who David Tang is? Like, is it David Tang? Sir David Tang? Hong Kong entrepreneur?
Yeah, art dealer.
Yeah, but he had an interesting show. I think he passed away a few years ago, but he had an interesting show where he had Jimmy Carr on, and Jimmy Carr was like apologizing for what he'd done, and David Tang just stood up and basically said, "Don't be stupid. Don't need to apologize. If you worked hard for that money, if anything, we should pay you money for entertaining us." He kind of just like this real kind of like Hong Kong, very businessman.
I think Jimmy was quite contrite after it. To be fair to Jimmy, he felt very bad, and I think he handled it very well. He doesn't even, like most freelancers will trade through a limited company. Jimmy doesn't even do that now. He's just Jimmy Carr, and he pays
his reputation as well. Maybe he personally feels that as well. I'm not going to speak for him.
I think Jimmy's very driven and very focused and very ambitious, but I think there's quite a big generous heart there as well beneath it all.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. I think I saw him once live in Stoke. I'm doxing myself now, aren't I? Damn it. Yeah, but I think that's an interesting segue into your other book, which
can I before we segue, I've just got to tell you, because I just was reminded of this. For Ken Dodd was an old English comedian from the generation before Jimmy Carr, and he famously got into a thing where he hadn't declared his tax properly
I remember,
with
yeah.
HMRC, which is our equivalent of the IRS, and he spent his whole life at war with HMRC. And the day before he died, he married his girlfriend, and so all his money went to her, and HMRC got nothing. And that's the greatest tax dodging story I've ever heard, I think. He won.
Yeah, I try to remember. There's he had some famous jokes about it as well, wasn't there? What did he say? I think he said this in court. He said, I didn't have to pay tax to the inland revenue because I live near the sea," or something like that. He just said in his kind of court hearing. I can't remember, something like that. But yeah, he was a character. So your book is Daylight Robbery, and I've almost finished it. I'm on chapter 19.
Okay.
And yeah, I'm going to sound like a little bit like a sycophant or something, but I really did like the book. I read a few, like I've read like Thomas Sowell and all these kind of books, but I found this book probably my favorite book on kind of like money issues so far. And what I like about it is I'm quite into history, and in a way it's like a history book. Tax can be quite dry, but you find an entertaining way to talk about tax in historical events, like how tax caused like the English Civil War, or how tax caused the American Civil War, or the French Revolution. So do you want to just talk a little bit about the book? Because
well, yeah, for sure, and with pleasure. It's my latest book. I wrote it. I did an Edinburgh show in 2016, and afterwards I got offered a book deal, and I thought I'll knock this book out really quickly. It would take me a couple of months. It ended up taking me 3 years. And
it's well researched, the history, I can imagine,
it's just huge. I found myself rewriting the entire history of civilization. But I mentioned earlier in the podcast that my theory on the world was that if we're going to save the world, we need to change our system of money. And then I was thinking about that, and then I suddenly realized, actually, it's not so much our system of money as it is our system of tax. Tax is power. Tax is how we rule people. Tax is how we control people. If a king or an emperor or a government lose their tax revenue, they lose their power. And you design a society by the way you tax it. You determine the destiny of that society, whether its people will be rich or prosperous or poor, whether they will be free or subordinated. And there's a relationship between tax and freedom. In fact, I think the extent to which a country is taxed is basically the cleanest measure of freedom within that society that you can see. Margaret Thatcher used to say you can't have freedom without economic freedom. And so I just became obsessed. And then I started looking back through history, and I realized that there has never been a civilization without taxation. Never. There have been civilizations where taxation was voluntary, but taxation has always existed. And even in, like, a slave is basically 100% of his labor, 100% of his body is owned. So a slave society is like 100% taxation. Whereas and one step down from that is totalitarianism, North Korea or something, where workers have very little ownership of their own labor. And then you go to the other extreme, which is like an anarchy, where there's no taxation. But even like something like Bitcoin, an anarchy, a voluntarist society like Bitcoin, there is still taxation in mining fees and transaction fees and all that. It's just a different form of taxation. So taxation is inevitable, but there are good taxes and there are bad taxes. But if you look at every great event in history, you can name me any great event from history, and I guarantee you there will be a tax story behind that event, without which that event would have unfolded in a way that was very different, even at all. And often that tax story is an untold part of that event. Every war was made possible by taxes. Every revolution was a rising up against some kind of economic injustice perpetrated by the tax system. Every conquest was about taking control of the tax base, the land, the labor, the produce, the profit. Even things like, the birth of Christ, the first men on Mary and Joseph were in Bethlehem to pay taxes, the first men on the moon, just even the only time you can say there wasn't a tax story in the causes is natural disasters, the plague or COVID-19 or something like that. but there is always a tax story in the rebuilding effort afterwards. We're seeing a huge tax story. You know, the plague changed the tax structure of Europe because we run out of people to do the work, and suddenly workers started receiving cash for their money. Even our surnames, the only reason we have surnames, it used to be that only aristocrats had surnames and ordinary people were just called Mike or Jim. But in order to differentiate people for the purposes of collecting poll taxes, they gave us surnames. You're Mike, who's a Smith. You're Mike, who lives by the Ford. You know, you do it differentiated by profession or by parentage, Mike, Jack's son, or by you know, a geographical feature of where they lived. You're about to show me something.
I knew I thought you might mention this, so I actually got my coat of arms for my name that I looked up. So my last name is Moss, and obviously reading this, it was first shown in the poll tax of 1379 when they wanted to tax my Anglo-Saxon ancestors, and I guess.
And what happened 2 years later?
Oh, was it the Peasants' Revolt?
Absolutely.
Wat Tyler and all that, yeah.
Wat Tyler and all that, revolting against I think it was the third poll tax they revolted against.
Yeah, well,
so that's brilliant. Great little.
Well, yeah, no, it's interesting because I actually read because moss is obviously like it's a it's like a plant, right? But it also comes from people. The mossy area was the peat bog. And the peat bog was like the village toilet. And the people by the peat bog, my people, were basically the people who manned the toilet for the village. So that's kind of tax Christian of the village toilet is kind of my. I guess Kate Moss has that as well with her.
You need to start Moss Lives Matter and seek reparations for all the damage that was being done against your forefathers 700 years ago.
Yeah. Well, no, I actually have. So I have kind of a. Sorry to interrupt you, but I actually got this at Warwick Castle. So you kind of go there and you have a gift shop with all the names on, like the key rings and everything. And I looked around, I couldn't find my name anywhere. So I went to the lady, and I said, you know, here's my name. I couldn't find it on the key ring, and so she's got a computer type, and said, oh yeah. Your name won't be there because we don't have commoner names on there. We only have like, you know, the well-to-do people's names. And then she said, my name is Price. I'm a Price, kind of stuck up. Anyway, she kind of found it and kind of printed it off. And then to kind of add insult to injury, she basically said, we've ran out of gift shop bags today. So she put my coat of arms in a bin bag and handed it to me. So that's kind of you know, classism.
You know, if you have a Norman surname in the UK, you are likely to be the average person with a Norman surname. 1,000 years after William the Conqueror is still 15% likely to be at least 15% wealthier than the average person with an Anglo-Saxon surname.
That makes sense, you know, and I think.
Of course it does. They were given all the land after 1066.
The thing about
some of them have had
England, you still have villages and pockets of kind of, you know, you can obviously, you know, it's not too dissimilar from like, you know, the old kind of areas. Like you can see it in accents, right? It's probably changing recently, but you know, people's accents, there's still this kind of legacy from history that is still very much in the society. I am actually a medieval reenactor as well, so actually I started it and I did it for about a few months, and then COVID happened, or as we call it, the plague, to be accurate. So it got cancelled, but and I'm an Anglo-Saxon soldier, but obviously when we do the reenactment, it's when, you know, the Normans had taken over, so there would be like, you can't wear that because you're an Anglo-Saxon, you know, you're Norman, and then we have to
sumptuary laws.
Yes, there's all these kind of interesting things. So yeah, I'm fascinated to learn more about it as I do more reenactment. But I think your book was quite interesting because you kind of go into this with the Peasants' Revolt and also King John and all these tax implications, how they really, kind of shape the society. Because after every conquer, William the Conqueror, there's a massive tax implications.
Yeah, and he gave us the Doomsday Book, which was basically divided up the UK for the purposes of collecting taxes. And Doomsday Book still sorts out land. I think it was still being used to sort out land ownership disputes as late as the 1960s.
Wow.
And but yeah, it's amazing how tax. And once you start to look at the world through this prism of taxation, it's one of those pulling back the curtain kind of moments. And Yeah, so that's the idea of the book, is sort of looking at retelling history through this prism, looking at the world. Once you understand taxation, you can see why the world is as it is today, and you also see what it's going to be like in the future.
What I found interesting in your book, you talk about the American Revolution, independence, where maybe I misunderstood it, but it sounds like obviously these things are complicated, but largely the British, in a way, protected the Americas from the French and had to levy taxes to pay for that, which are still lower than taxes in Britain. So the Americans didn't like that. No taxation without representation, the Sons of Liberty, etc. But then, ironically, in the war, they ended up in debt or owing tax to the French, who helped them. So it's like,
yeah, that war cost them a lot of money.
Yeah, but kind of.
I suppose looking back, they're glad they did it now.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, obviously, I'm not advocating for for them to rejoin the crown or anything.
We don't want them.
Well, what do you think about are you going to add an extra chapter to the book, given like the whole aftermath of COVID and Bitcoin? I think you touch on Bitcoin at the end, but after COVID, how do you think that's going to change taxes going forward? Because this is a new.
So many of the things I talked about in the future have, the rise of remote working. I talked about a lot, and digital nomads, and using cryptocurrency, and the two-tier society that's described in The Sovereign Individual. I talked about that at great length, and that's all been accelerated by COVID. The one thing that's been slowed is movement of people. But I do think you're going to see one group who's trapped in the physical economy in one place, and then another sovereign group of individuals, freelancers, digital nomads, whatever you want to call them, flitting from country to country, tax jurisdiction to tax jurisdiction, paying much lower levels of taxes. There was two things I had, two big chapters I had in the book, all about that I took out of the book because I was just trying to make it a bit readable and a bit shorter. I wish I'd left them in now. But one was about government services replacing government services, and another about tech becoming more powerful than governments, and tech being our new rulers. So, and if you look at the combined market cap of like Microsoft, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Google, it's bigger than the GDP of every country in the world except China and the US and possibly Japan. I'm not sure, and obviously the Eurozone. But so already these companies are extraordinarily powerful, and there's this sort of unholy alliance going on between the two. But eventually, the law will not be determined by the country in which we live, but by the platform we are operating on. So it doesn't matter what, for example, free speech laws are in England. Whatever Twitter says is free speech, is what the rule is. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And you won't be able to speed in your car, because your car will be driverless, and the speed at which it drives will be pre-programmed. All these things. So we're kind of, and the tax that we pay is our data. As much as it is money to these companies, it's our data. And data as a thing didn't even exist 25 years ago, maybe 30 years ago. But so there was a lot about that. But basically all the stuff I said about the future has been accelerated by COVID, and you'll read that book now, and if you read the two chapters I didn't put in, even more so, you'll think, oh, this guy's some kind of, he should become a futurologist, because it's already coming true.
Well, you tend to end on the well not end, but I think I'm chapter 18, 19, but you talk about the digital nomad, and I think that's something that we see in Bitcoin for sure. And like, I've been a digital nomad, and I've crossed paths with people who are digital nomads. They travel the world, they work remotely, and they get paid in Bitcoin wherever they can. They don't have any stuff, and like, why would you stay in a country that can lock you down at any new pandemic? It's, I don't know, it's
yeah, I mean, loads of people went to Mexico, loads of people went to Dubai, quite a few people are going to Portugal. Greece and Malta are desperate for people to go there. They reckon that 50% of American workers, this is Ernst & Young have done this survey, by 2030, 50% of the American workforce will be contingent. In other words, freelancers, gig economy, all the rest of it. 50%. That's an extraordinarily high number. And globally, the population will be 9 billion by 2035, of which 6 billion will be workers. Now, if half of those are freelancers of some kind, of those freelancers, they reckon 1 billion will be digital nomads. And this isn't, so that 1 in 3. And so that gives you 1 billion digital nomads by 2035. And this isn't just Europeans and Americans going to Cartagena and Chiang Mai. It's Chinese, Africans, the South American middle class, the Asian middle class, the new African middle class, all doing the same thing. And crypto's enabling so much of it because, for a lot of people, it's just simply the best opportunity that they've got. Particularly people who are trapped in physical economies in deepest, darkest Africa, as long as they've got an internet signal where they can start working in the digital economy. So, it's just going to be a reality of our new world. The digital nomad is going to be, and you'll see some nations will clamp down on it and will try and extract. But if a digital nomad doesn't spend 183 days in any given one country, who does he pay taxes to? How much taxes he pays? It's really not clear. And a lot of digital nomads left their own country because they didn't like it, so they feel no obligation to pay taxes to their own country. They left it because of high house prices or injustice or whatever reason. So there's just going to be this huge non-tax paying workforce. When I say non-tax paying, they'll pay local taxes, VAT and so on, but they won't pay
income tax.
Necessarily pay income tax. A lot of the time, even if they wanted to pay income tax, it's just not that easy. Like, how do you start doing your calculating your taxes from from Lightning money that you've earned gaming?
Well, I was just going to go on to that. So you might find this interesting. So at Zebedee, which is a company I'm a co-founder from, we have you heard, maybe not, but there's a game called Counter-Strike, which is like 24 million monthly active users. It's a major popular game, and we added a Bitcoin to the game so people can basically pay like a few dollars to enter a game, compete against other people, and then if you do well, you get the Bitcoin out. So it's kind of like skill-based competition. And we have a lot of people who talk to us, and they're people from like South America, and they are earning more than their wage playing this game, playing against, I don't know, like people across the world. And it's like, it's because because Bitcoin, like it's almost like earning dollars in a way, right? Compared to their currency, it's worth so much more, right? And because they're playing against people across the world, they're playing against people in America in a way. The values are kind of higher. So, but yeah, we've got these nice stories. I think we had one story. He played with the consent of his father, so I'll put that out there. But he entered a competition, and 20 minutes he played this game at our last esports event, and he was like 15, and he just basically earned enough Bitcoin to last him for like a few months, right? And if that Bitcoin appreciates, and all he did was 20 minutes, so we're starting to
where was he from?
I think maybe Brazil or Argentina. I can't remember.
Okay.
But we basically, we have. It seems to be South Americans seem to get it. They just love to earn kind of Bitcoin in a gaming. It's like you're doing work in a virtual world.
I think South Americans have an intrinsic understanding of inflation.
They do.
There's a really loony left contingent in South America. As a result, there's a really the country's prone to inflations. Argentina's had about 23. Brazil's had many. Bolivia's had a couple. Venezuela, obviously, at the moment. Inflation has been a real blight. You talk to Brazilians. I mean, I was in Brazil a couple of years ago, and you talk to them. They would buy 2 fridges and just keep loads of meat in the fridges because meat was one of the best hedges against inflation, because they knew that 2 weeks later the meat was going to cost so much more.
Well, we hire a lot of
freezers, not 2 fridges.
We hire a lot of developers from Brazil, like just purely per happenstance. We didn't seek them out, but we just got like applicants, and like they're just as skilled as like American developers, but they're just but for them the money that we pay them is like life-changing, right? But if we paid the same amount to someone in California or San Francisco, it wouldn't be, it'd be nothing. But I guess it's kind of like this digital world. People can live in, Brazil, or they can live in Vietnam, but they can work in London or New York or San Francisco.
And why would you pay, like, if you it sounds ridiculous, but my mum has got a house in Palm Springs in California, and she bought it. I think it was £280,000. I can't remember if it was pounds or dollars, but let's just say $300,000, or maybe it's worth $400,000. And it's 2,000 square foot. It's got an orchard, a swimming pool, a garage. Now, the idea of for 300,000 quid in London,
Yeah.
you couldn't even get a studio flat. And if you want to buy even a house for 2 million quid in London, and 2 million quid is $2.5–3 million, it really doesn't buy you that nice a house. You get a pretty nice house, but it's not like a mansion. And now for 2.5 million quid, you should get a fucking mansion. You really should. You shouldn't just get a nice terraced house in Battersea.
So my twin brother, he lives in Richmond, and I moved back to England, and I thought, should I live in London? So for like half the price of his flat in Richmond, I just got a nice house, in the Midlands, let's say. And
absolutely.
He has to go on the tube and go and work in, it's just, I'm lucky to be a programmer, I suppose, but it's
well, Richmond's beautiful. I mean, it is a lovely area.
It is.
So much history to it.
He's in the worst building in Richmond, though. It's like the one tower block they built there. He's made it look nice inside, but you can see Kew Gardens from outside. So
yeah, but so why would you pay 2 million quid on what is essentially a depreciating?
His wife is a socialite.
Yeah, but I understand why he does, and I understand why people do. But if you can go and live in the same house that costs you a tenth of the price in a different country, and it makes no difference to your work. In fact, you might even earn less, but you still have a better lifestyle. Why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah, well, I think people are doing it. I guess the argument I've heard is people just want to be in the city where it's at. When you're young, you want to like walk into the bar, make those connections. You don't want to be in the middle of nowhere. But I think people more and more, their life is becoming online. Like, I'm speaking to you online. We've never met. I get to meet lots of great people online. So maybe that's not as important. I don't know.
It's if you'd said even 5 years ago, even 3 years ago, you would have said it's going to take us a long, long time before online equals real life. But COVID and Zoom and all the rest of it has just accelerated it. And I'd rather be sat in a pub with you doing this podcast, or sat in a video games room, and I can play this video game that I'm going to be crap at in the room with you. But this is pretty good.
You could do that maybe once a month. Get on the train. I don't know. That's how I kind of feel about it. I was a bit moving out to the countryside. I was a bit, will my wife get bored or whatever? Will we get bored? But then it's like, well, if we want to go into the city, we can. And when we go there, we'll have more money to spend. When I lived in Tokyo, it's great living in Tokyo, but then it's like you have less money to spend in Tokyo. If that makes sense. Yeah. So it's I don't know.
So expensive, Tokyo. I loved Tokyo when I went, but blimey, it's expensive.
Yeah, but London, I think London's more expensive. It depends on the thing. London is just insane. Like, I went from Latvia to London, and it's just like, why? Like, Latvia's beautiful. And sorry, my dog walked in. I think that's a cue for. Maybe we should just do the video game, and after that, we got some questions from the audience.
The only thing I can say is, like, I'm not even sure I can do four laps. Could take me about 10 minutes.
Let's try.
It's so bad.
Let's do 1 lap then. We'll do.
All right. But I mean, it's just going to be embarrassing. The only thing I want to do is I just want to take Peter McCormack's record and be the worst. Worst one.
Well, let me try and. Hello, dog.
I'm going to launch this game, am I?
Yeah, you launch the game. I am just going to show the folks the leaderboard. You think you can see the leaderboard as well? Oh, hold on, not yet. I don't want to share that screen.
I'm going online, yeah?
Yeah, I haven't made the game. Won't show at the moment. Yeah, go to fundraisers and do everything. I haven't made the game, so it won't appear just yet.
Okay, join game. Continue as Dominic Frisby, yeah?
Okay.
Europe,
yep. So King of Bedford is 76.3 seconds if you have a look at the screen. No, 75.27.
all I've got is a blue screen. I can't. Oh, that screen, yeah.
Yeah, no worries.
Right.
let me launch the game.
So no coin and Ned is the worst one, is he?
That's like I basically when we first did it, we didn't have anybody to beat, so I got my no coiner friend to do it, and so that you have to beat the no coiner.
Please let me beat the no coiner.
Let me just figure this out here. Okay,
and if I run into trouble, I press P. Yeah.
Yes, that's correct. Okay, there we go. So I'm gonna make the game now. You remember the password, don't you?
Oh fuck! Hang a minute. Yeah, I do.
Okay, I'm just gonna set up the game. So I'll quit.
Did you not want to say it?
No, because if I say it, people will join. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay.
Anybody can join.
And then they'll race me and then humiliate me.
Well, that's sure they'd love to. You can never type when someone's watching you. Okay. So the game should appear in a second. Okay, you should be able to join it now.
There we go. It's like, what's his name? The theme tune's like
cheesy jazz. Kind of.
No, it's like, what's his name? Who did that happy song? What's Leroy Pharrell Williams? It's like Pharrell Williams.
Oh, okay, perhaps, yeah. I just found kind of free music online to add to the game, so this seemed alright. Sound alright for racing.
So am I going to be Satoshi? Is that my character?
Yeah, you have to race as Satoshi because everybody does. It's like Top Gear. Everybody does the same car to keep it fair.
It's not giving me the option to press OK.
Press Satoshi, just and press enter. No? Maybe go back and do it again.
I've got him. I'll go back.
Yeah.
It's not giving me the option. I press Satoshi. Oh, I see what happens. I press Satoshi. I press OK.
Okay, so it will show your stats.
It says speed, acceleration, and all that.
Increase the speed. I forgot to say that. Increase the speed. That'll help you.
Yeah.
Yeah, increase it to maximum.
Okay.
And then press OK if you see that button at the bottom of the stats.
No, it's grayed out.
It's grayed out?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe did you go back off the screen and try to join the game again? Maybe a small bug there, perhaps.
Okay, I'll join again. I'm rejoining. Private room access. Can't believe I'm one of these guys playing video games on the internet and other people are watching. That is something I've never ever understood, and I understand it even less with me playing. Right. So I'm going to be Satoshi. I'm hitting Satoshi. I've got the speed on full, and it's still grayed out.
Still grayed out? Can you share your screen?
Yeah.
Oh, I think the button for some reason is. Can you make your screen bigger? Can you make the game bigger? Expand the game. Now press the button. Yeah, sorry. It's well, scale bug. We got there.
That gives you an idea about how bad I'm going to be.
No, well, that's an issue. The game is still in development, so there's a few scaling issues. Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Okay, well, we'll do one and see how it goes.
Okay, here we go. So am I live on? This is going to be broadcast on
This is streaming now, yeah.
Okay. Here we are at the start line. Satoshi Nakamoto, driven by Dominic Frisby. He sets his wheels. The wheels go in motion. 3. Tell me when to start. 2, 1, and off he goes. And it's a tearaway start. He goes up the middle. Currently in first place. There are bitcoins along the way. At what point does he start to decelerate into the bend? It's now. It's now. Oh shit! Oh man.
Good commentary.
Yeah, the commentary is better than the thing.
If you can't drive well, make it entertaining.
He's slightly shaken up there. Shaken up by the and he accelerates into the straight. This is the yards in the gym paying off now. Here we go. And round the bend. He takes the bend. And Nan has taken over. Nan has taken over the driving. And he puts his foot down. Oh, he's got a Bitcoin. He's got a Bitcoin. He's got to get round the bend. Oh, he's straight. Oh, fuck.
I'll say to our audience, you can tell that Dominic isn't a gamer, but he's been such a good sport to agree to do this. So even at
he can't get round, and
the cost of his credibility in the gaming world.
He goes into accelerate. He goes in now.
People are enjoying it. The people are saying it's funny.
He knows there's a hairpin bend. He's no. Oh, he's oh, what happened there?
There was a speed boost.
He took off. He has no idea what happened there, the driver, but he'll take whatever it gives him. An unexpected donation into his wallet. And here we go. Accelerates down the hill. Oh, Christ. Straighten it up, man. And there we go.
People who play this game during competition, some people don't even race. They just get all the coins. That's their kind of strategy. If they know they're not going to win.
But this is all about the time, isn't it?
This one's about the time, yeah.
This is a really tricky bend he's got here. Really tricky.
Holy moly, this is hilarious. What we got.
He really struggling here. Struggling on the hill. Comes round. He needs to. Oh, he can't. He just keeps hitting the left and it's not coming off for him. There's the finish line. There's the finish line.
There we go.
He's taken the finish line.
You can do another lap if you want, or do you want to end it there? Let's end it there then. Okay, so I'm going to just find out what your time was. Okay. Okay, I've got that time down, and I'll end the game, and you'll be able to withdraw your sats.
The host. I felt I was improving in the second lap there.
Well, maybe we can get you on another time or something, and once you practice, or we can do it in a pub. We can do it in a pub or something. I'll bring a controller.
So those are genuine sats that you put on the racetrack there that people can take.
Yeah. So we're a Bitcoin gaming company, so we're all about basically changing the Mario coins in games to Bitcoin, pretty much, right?
Isn't that fantastic? Very clever.
Commonplace to me.
Real things. So it's like having real money. Real money in a video game.
We do cool stuff like that, So we even have, when we do these the esports events, the audience can send Bitcoin into the game to drop power-ups for the player to collect. And then if the player gets...
Is that what happened when I suddenly took off like that?
No, we didn't do it this time, but
somebody... Okay, I went into warp speed like Harrison Ford in Star Wars.
There was a speed pad on the bottom, but yeah, we also have a thing where if a player plays well and they get some Bitcoin, that they can actually get Bitcoin and send it to the audience. So all kind of like breaking the barriers and stuff and expanding the economies. Wow. Yeah.
It's like I don't know if you ever saw Nicolas Cage doing an interview on Wogan when he was coked off his face and he just walked into the audience and just started throwing money into the audience.
Well,
he's got a wallet of notes and started throwing them out. It's a bit like that, but without the coke.
Yeah, well, perhaps. I generally got the idea from gladiators. You know how gladiators would need to win the audience, and if the audience liked them, the emperor was more likely to kind of not, favor them, right? So if you go out of your way in an esports to try and reward the audience, then maybe there's that kind of benefit. We're experimenting with these things, so it's all good. Anyway, I'm going to try and how do you think you did? I guess is the question that Jeremy Clarkson would ask.
It felt like a lot longer than 75 seconds, I'm going to say.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to lie, it was a lot longer than 75 seconds, but you think 890, 2 minutes?
2 minutes.
Well, I haven't said it yet. What do you think? I haven't actually said it, so.
Oh, I see. 90 seconds. No, it's longer than that. And at 1 minute 45.
1 minute 45. That's what you're going for. Okay, well, who have we got? Well, King of Bedford is 75. So, but he has.
So that's 1 minute 15. Yeah. So
he likes fast cars, right? He's got an Aston Martin now, so maybe he's got.
Might be the wrong side of 100.
Yeah. Well, okay. I'm just gonna refresh the page, so you should be able to see in a few seconds. And there we go. 135 seconds. So
that's just
you've set a new low.
Astonishing. That's 2 minutes and 15.
The first person to lose against a no coiner. So It's kind of.
Can you put that up on Twitter so that McCormack sees that, because that's just astonishingly bad.
Don't worry, we will. So.
Oh my God, that's terrible.
Have to
Well,
get.
if I'd done other laps, I might have improved it, but
Sure,
I don't think it would
your
have made
first
great
lap,
TV
your
for our
first lap
audience.
is always your slowest because you start off from 0. Your second lap, you're coming in with some speed.
I see.
You see what I mean? But yeah, it was the most entertaining one. So maybe I'll give like a special. I'll put a little note. Most entertaining. You have your own leaderboard.
I don't think anyone's ever going to shift me out of that position.
Oh, you'd be surprised.
You're going to have.
Yeah, I think that wasn't. I can imagine we've got like we've got Adam back coming on soon.
If you get David Chaum on the show, I reckon I might beat him.
We'll see. Okay, that's the mission. Try and find somebody worth.
Do you know who I mean by David Chaum?
Yeah, it cashed, right? Did you cash? He cashed one of the.
Yeah, but he'll be
Chaumium cash.
He's even older than I am.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think. Maybe we can get another UK comedian on you have a rivalry with, perhaps. I don't know. Jeff Norcott.
That'll probably be really good there. Yeah, Norcott. I'll get Norcott. I'm doing his podcast tomorrow morning, actually.
Oh, really? That's great. That'll be quite interesting.
Yeah.
Probably the audience don't know who we're talking about now, but anyway, but big thanks for actually doing that. I know it's quite a lot to ask for to install a game, especially when you have into Bitcoin. I could have all sorts of wallet stealing devices installed on it, but
I was a bit. I will say I was a bit paranoid.
I don't blame you.
Like, why is he getting me to download?
I don't blame you. No. Yeah. Cool. We're gonna just.
Go on.
I was going to say we're going to. We're well over time, so thanks for joining on. But I want to end with some audience questions. So if that's okay for you. Sure. So if anybody in the audience wants to ask a question, do so now. I'll be watching it in the Twitter chat, and we actually got a few questions when we were talking, but I think I've gone over them. The first question, I think we had one on Twitter. We had two actually on Twitter. I think one was something like that. You come from a playwright family in London, and generally London playwriters are quite liberal, left-wing, people like Jonathan Miller and Alan Bennett. But you are, I guess, the black sheep, that you're you're libertarian, I would say. So I don't know, why, I suppose is a question. Why did you not do the same as your peers? Did you lose all your friends?
Oh yeah, I've long since been an outcast from the entertainment industry, but my dad was pretty left-wing. He wasn't socialist. He was a social democrat. My dad. He was very excited about the SDP when they came along in the 1980s. And the entertainment industry does tend to favour the left, but I genuinely think it doesn't understand, because they'll go, oh, the NHS, because they want to make sure that people have good health care. But if you go, well, actually, I don't think the NHS is the best means to provide the best possible healthcare to the most possible people. And actually, if you provide healthcare through decentralized voluntarism, capitalism, people acting out their own interests, you'll end up with a better system of healthcare. And they just can't get that. And so I think, but if you actually look at the business, their industry, like the entertainment industry is a pretty libertarian industry. You succeed or fail by your own contact, your own merits, and everything else. And I mean, and there's too much subsidy in the entertainment industry, but there's also a lot of areas of it where there's absolutely zero subsidy, and it's quite a free market. Television's riddled with subsidy, but elsewhere it's quite, and theatre as well. But so I think if you sat them down and gave them a week's training about libertarianism and what it means and how Adam Smith's invisible hand works and so on, a lot of them would actually realize that, oh, actually I am libertarian. But it's a religion, they all have to say they're part of the left, because if they don't say they're part of the left, then they get excommunicated and they don't get work. So it's part of you have to sort of make noises that conform to the religion, if that makes sense.
Do you think it's why a lot of people say
partly that and partly ignorance?
People who are liberal generally have more creative brains, so it's just, is it like a somewhat, I don't know, like a genetic thing? Like if you are creative, you're more likely to work in the arts, and then you're less likely to be, say, conservative. Maybe it's as simple as that, I wonder, or is it like a cultural thing?
There might be a bit of that, but as I say, I think a lot of them think they're left wing.
Okay.
But actually, I think deep down, if you judge people on what they actually do rather than what they say, there's a lot of tax dodging goes on in the entertainment industry.
Sure.
There's
Yeah.
a lot of greed is
Actors in
good
their
going on in the
mansions and
industry.
accountants. Yeah.
So I think if
It's
you
all
actually look at what they do, there's quite a lot of libertarian behaviour, even though the words are liberal.
Yeah. I think I found like the NHS quite interesting because I've been living abroad like for like best part of 12 years and doing other countries' healthcare and coming back to England with it is very strange. It is like a religion, which is
It's a religion, and
it's,
it's our,
it's
in America, it's the
they're not open
military.
to
I couldn't
different
believe it when I
ideas.
went to America and they clap all the soldiers. And I went, what the fuck's that about? Every time you go in an airport, they clap all the soldiers when they walk through the airport, and it's like
Yeah,
us clapping the nurses. It's just with the death of Christianity and other religions,
sure.
the state has replaced it, whether military or healthcare.
Yeah, on that. It's kind of interesting. Like at the moment, I think the pushback against vaccine passports is coming from the church. So I guess there's definitely kind of a thing between big state and lack of religion, and I think, but
Well, it
maybe
used to
it goes other
be
ways. But
that the three power bases was the church, the barons,
mm,
and the government and the crown. The church, the barons, and the crown. Those are the three power bases. Now, I would say it's the state, the corporations, and the media, or maybe the state, corporations, and tech. There's a bit of crossover, but those are the three. Those are the
yeah,
three sort of power centers. And the church just, the church used to be the media. If you realize that pigs are making people ill and we got to stop people eating pigs, make it a sin. And
mm,
that's the way you'd get the
interesting. Yeah,
message
sure.
out. Now we do, you know, we have ads where people go, stay safe instead. That's replaced it.
Yeah. No, that's a fascinating subject. I think you could do a whole podcast on that in itself. But on to more
Yeah, you
questions.
could.
Another question.
Let's whiz through these as quick as
Yeah,
possible because
sorry.
I've
No
got my
problem.
daughter on the phone, so I've just got
I'll
to
just
deal with some
do
stuff from
one
the
more then,
university.
actually, just one more. Does he think that central banks' very loose monetary policy and the government loose fiscal policy can hurt crypto in the short run, as it creates a moral hazard for people to speculate in things such as NFTs and Dogecoin? If money is loose, why not let loose? I guess he's saying, are they pumping crypto inadvertently with low interest rates or something? Or
I think the looser monetary policy gets, the better it is for crypto. But it also, the more bubblicious and stupid crypto gets.
yeah,
And I remember loads of people put their stimulus checks in the States. They just put it straight into crypto. I remember getting my bounce back loan, and if HSB had processed it on time, I would have put it straight into crypto, but they didn't, so I didn't end up doing it because I'd missed the run by the time HSBC gave me my bounce back loan. But yeah, I mean, if monetary policy suddenly went really tight and we had 5% or 7% interest rates, and there'd actually be a reason to hold fiat money because it paid a yield, then a lot of money would leave crypto. A lot of the speculation would go, and the crypto price would fall along with the prices of everything else, which is why it's not going to happen because they're propping up every bubble at all costs. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. But yeah, I think the biggest, bizarrely, I've been thinking about these central bank digital currencies, and I'm really worried about them and the controls they make possible. And I do think there might be, like in the UK, the FCA have already made crypto derivatives illegal, and I think they're going to try and make the more authoritarian countries, the more out of control lefty stupid countries are going to try and clamp down on crypto and make it illegal. I think in the next, maybe not now, but in a few years' time. And the countries that do best will obviously be those that embrace it rather than shun it. And I think it's been beautiful because over the last 10 years, they've just sort of looked at it and been baffled by it and haven't realized the threat it is. And the more established it gets, the harder it is to close down. But there'll be France or somewhere will make, or maybe France can't because it's EU. But you get my point. Somewhere will try and make it illegal. The
yeah.
EU are going to hate crypto.
I kind of feel
Totally
that
undermines
I have
everything
a
they
feel
stand
that
for.
they might try to do it on some sort of climate accord because that's where you can get more global consensus.
Yeah,
And
they'll
I
get
think
it. They'll
they'll
it'll be
attack mining
they'll
or
go.
something. Or
Yeah, they'll say it's they're already all there's a load of stupid idiots who are already calling for it to be banned for that very same reason.
yeah, I know. I've been
Yeah.
raging on Twitter. Anyway, I'll let you go because you've been such a sport. This is the longest podcast I think we've done. So big thanks for joining
is
on.
it?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So great, but yeah, so make sure to check out the Shadowpunk Revolution. We'll link to all this on Twitter. But thanks for being on the show. And yeah.
I've had a really good time. Have a nice evening, and thanks very much for watching. And thank you, folks, for all the sats you've given me.
Yeah.
All the Zebedee money. 4 payments received. 4 sats. That's almost a penny. I'm sure that people are giving me more of that. But thanks very much.
No worries.
And I'll see you soon.
Okay. See you.